So, Hallöchen, schön, dass ihr alle da seid. Wir haben noch kleine technische Schwierigkeiten gelöst, aber danach geht es hier direkt weiter. Wir haben den Johannes Mainusch da stehen, der ist Gründer und CTO bei Commitment und ehemaliger VP bei Xing und er möchte mit euch über intelligente Organisationen sprechen und im besten Fall nicht nur intelligente Organisationen, sondern auch, wie man, wenn man noch keine intelligente Organisation ist, da wieder rauskommt. Und ein paar von euch gucken mich jetzt schon komisch an. The talk was announced in English as well as in German. Do we have only English-speaking people here who would not understand if we talked in English? Over there. So we're doing it in English, Johannes? Yes. Okay. So let's keep it in English. Johannes wants to talk about organizations, and he compares them to organisms, because organizations and organisms are quite similar in his opinion. They want to survive. They want to consume, they produce waste in some kind, and in best case they have a purpose and even intelligence. The problem with organizations is often they don't make up the sum of their individual intelligences, but are only a fracture of the intelligence. And how do you help those organizations to become more intelligent? How do you identify a stupid organization? Are they able to achieve any goal in an effective way? This and several other questions is Johannes going to answer, and I think we don't want to let you wait anymore. Please make some noise for Johannes Mainusch.
All right, I'll do it in English. I'll try my very best. It will be Dinglish. I'm not sure. I think the slides are all in German, and so yeah, that's it. So what do I have to do to get it to show something? Do I click here? Ha! Organizations! Organizations have been following me in my professional life for some decades now. I actually worked for Xing. I don't know why that is in my biography, because I was in 2008 to 2012, and after that I had other organizations I worked for as well. But at that time, Xing was actually really great. Who of knew? I was so patriotic with that company for so long, but of course now I'm on LinkedIn. Who knows Xing? Who of you, who has still a Xing profile? Yeah, some, the right half, the left half, no, that's funny. All right, so let's do something at the start. This is actually, I have to mention that I'm working with Commitment. Commitment is the best consulting company ever. We are very small, very dedicated. And the name is Program, and we help organizations in change management, interim management, that's what I do a lot, agile coaching. We are the kind of fixes if you need a flat or an agile developer or a QA person. So we do all that, but that's enough of our Commitment company. This is the starting slide of intelligent organizations. And note the birds. I really like birds. Do you know these birds, flocks of birds that swarm, you know, starlings? They're amazing. I might talk about them. But first, let's do a game. Please do scan the QR code. And I'm not sure whether this is going to work, because I programmed it myself. So probably it's not going to work. I always thought, if you give a talk, you should give people the ability to throw at you with tomatoes and eggs. And that's what that's called. It's not working, right? Shit.
It is.
What do you mean by it is? Press something. I should see tomatoes and eggs on the screen.
No.
It is not working. How come? Okay, so, but this is actually good for the time duration of the talk, because I was going to play a game with you. Maybe that works. Let's see. Whether that works. See that? See, there's lots of people in here that actually recognizes you. Let's do this. Let's try the startup thing. It should actually animate flying tomatoes. Oh, here they are. Look at that. It's not great. You should be able to throw tomatoes all over my presentation. So, but please try to do that now. We do a startup game. Only tomatoes count. Please only press tomatoes. If you press anything else, it would count negative, and we need a high score of 1,200 points. So basically, you won! And if you look at your little telephones, there's superhero names on top of your telephone, and the actual winner is Hellboy through, it's still updating, so you're probably DOSing my application here. Anyway, Hellboy won, Supergirl won, I don't know. And also we have in the organization people who missed, and these are on the troll list, the tomato trolls. So that was the startup mode. Let's try Lufthansa Technik, that's more difficult. Remember, only tomatoes score. We start with tomatoes. See, it's not so easy because the tomatoes keep flipping away. But can you, as a group, achieve the goal and win the game? No, you can't. You're negative. You have to do the tomatoes, not the other stuff. The other stuff is really counting negative. So it's interesting, you know, if you do this talk with nerds, they always obey you. Sometimes you have trolls in your organization. If I tell you, throw tomatoes, somebody will deliberately not throw tomatoes, but other stuff. And you won. Great. And again, Hellboy. Who is Hellboy? Hellboy, you're a great gamer. I would like, and you also throw good quality. No, you don't throw too good quality. You missed 4 tomatoes. Do you want to do the NASA game? The NASA game is difficult to win for an audience because every miss counts 5 negative points, and additionally, it rotates all the time. So let's see whether you can bring the quality that NASA expects from you into your organization. Throw! Faster! You cretins, will you please throw tomatoes? You see, it's not so easy. The game is difficult to win. Maybe you should not throw so fast, but more deliberate. Okay, I think you're going to lose. I help you losing. Oh no, this doesn't work. Okay. You're not getting onto the positive side of things here. You're not performing as a team. Your quality is shit. You try for outcome and you miss all the time. Let's quit this. I quit the game. Game over. As a manager, I'm dissatisfied with you guys. You didn't do too well. Not in the last game, but in the other ones. Isn't that interesting? What I like is, of course, I fell in love with that game when I programmed it. And it's interesting that it's difficult for a group to win. But I like the principle. You can only win together, but there still might be individuals to push you forward, like Hellboy. You did an excellent job in the previous game. So, I'm going to talk about organizations, and my dog is in the talk, and she says, few trolls can actually break your organism, your organization. So beware of the trolls. Or maybe in management mode, we should better obey not to put people into troll mode. At the time when I worked at Xing, we had these forums and discussion groups and so on, and we always had trolls. There were like 100,000 people on the platform each hour, so there were also in groups trolls, and we always said, never feed the trolls. That's actually a good paradigm, and maybe we as managers should just do that, not feed trollism. Now, of course, all of you know how you can feed trolls or produce trolls in an organization. If you shout at the people, more quality, do it faster, you cretins, if you shout at them all the time, most people will not take this as an encouragement. Some do. So look out for the trolls. But I'm going to talk about intelligence of organizations, so I'm going to try to talk about that. And I'm fascinated by the topic because I simplify all the time, and probably I'm all wrong in simplification. But you know what the average intelligence quotient of a person is? How intelligent are you guys in average? 100, exactly. The definition of IQ is 100 is where you have this Gaussian shape or whatever kind of shape it is. At the peak, that's 100. So it'd actually be great if an organization would have the intelligence of, I think we are probably about 100 people in here, 100 times 100, everybody brings his 100 intelligent points to the organization, so we are at 10,000. We could build an organization with 10,000 IQ. Wouldn't that be great? In reality, it's not that way. Usually you apply or you appoint a CEO, and the CEO, and probably I'm getting ahead of myself a bit, but it doesn't matter. CEO has to be super intelligent, IQ of 150, so that whenever he looks at your PowerPoint charts, because I'm only 128 or something like that, then he would always point out, Johannes, you did a fucking mistake there, do it properly, so micromanage me all the way through. And then you have an intelligent organization which runs with 100 people with 150. That's okay, but it's not great. So how do we actually get into what is an intelligent organization? I asked that to Google image search, and these are the images for it, and it looks beautiful. The intelligent organizations. So let's look a bit into that. And I have an example, and I want you to do the same thing. Please, for a moment, close your eyes. I will try to do the same and not fall off the stage. And I'll try to remember, of course, I have remembered that because it's the next example. Try to remember the one time when you had a really great experience with a team or with a company, the project that went well, private, what was really good, you know? Can you remember something where with people together, something worked out really well? It was great, fantastic. That's the bonfire story that you tell to folks. Who has one? The rest not? Who has never experienced people working together in flow in a good way? Maybe I posed the question wrong. Maybe you're indifferent. You've never experienced that. So ask again. Who has? Okay, some of you, I trust, have experienced that. You not. Thanks. I should do that in German because, you know, that's in English my questions to the audience somehow get mumbled. Anyway, keep that thought in mind. Put it in your right hand. Keep it here. That's a beautiful experience. And just whenever you're tomorrow in the next organization, do the same thing. Just do it exactly. Experience it again. If it was that easy, organizations would never need consultants like me. And actually, I have a hard time of reproducing stuff like that. So one of the things is a very simple organization. It's moving. A bucket brigade, it's called in English. In German, it's called eine Umzugskette. Do you know that? You live in Hamburg, there are flats 3 or 4 stories high, and people ask you next Saturday morning, would you help me moving from one flat to the other? They have a moving van and everything, and most of the people say, oh yeah, I would really like to do that, but I have back, or a sore back, or I'm on vacation. And then a few people end up helping others. And I once experienced, and I find that very interesting, because the rules are so simple. For a bucket brigade or an Umzugskette, the rules for this organization is, if you have a parcel, you walk up the stairs, and downstairs is the moving van. If you have a parcel, you go down until you meet somebody who has no parcel, and you just hand it over, and then you go back up again. That's the simple rules. I should say, it doesn't say you own a territory, like I moved the stuff from story 3 to 4. You don't put anything down. You keep the stuff moving all the time. And the interesting thing is, it seems to me that that kind of organization is self-regulatory. In general, you could put everybody into that bucket brigade chain. It will sort of sort itself out. And in order to prove that, I did a simulation. And there is a QR code now. And this is the simulation. This is my bucket brigade. Can you see that? It's on a little internet platform. I give you the QR code. It's in the talk later on. And it's interesting the way, you know, these little Pac-Man, color means you have a parcel, you go downstairs, you deliver it, and you go up again. And it seems to sort, most of the time, it seems to sort itself out after some time, and you get a nice even throughput, and everything works fine. And you can, if you want to have more people in your moving chain, you could put more people in it, and at some point it breaks, but that's my simulation. It's not the principle of the bucket brigade that breaks, it's just my simulation. So, there are ideal organizations. This is the bucket brigade, and you see, it's somehow, in a simple organization like this, things become better, and at some point you're really in the flow and everything works. And I tell you, this moving event was great. It was fantastic. It took us like 2 hours or so, or 1.5 hours, to move a whole flat into the van and load it off again, and everybody was in good humor. The work was going hand in hand, and it was really good fun. And I thought, let's reproduce it. I'll tell you later what happened when I tried to reproduce it. So my dog says, if it works, just let it work out. Don't micromanage. There are proven organizational patterns that you can use for certain things, like the bucket brigade, or the Umzugskette is ideal if you want to move parcels. Pros do it that way. There are systems which are self-regulatory. That's a lot better than micromanagement if the thing just works and everybody knows what to do. That's fantastic. It gives flexibility to the individual. You don't need to be very fit. You do your work and it somehow fits in, and yet you still attribute your working power to the whole. You need to look for the weakest link, because if you put your 80-year-old grandmother or grandfather into the bucket brigade, maybe the parcels are too heavy for them. So then best don't put them in the bucket brigade, because they will break the system. Move them downstairs on the bench and let them talk nicely to people and hand out coffees. That's a better job for them. But do that, because it's also important. You should not allow people to break the rules. I have a friend who always said, well, I put the parcel down here. I'm fed up. I don't want to go down the next 2 stories. Immediately the system is broken. This system would be broken. So look at the rules. Look at it from a helicopter perspective. That always helps. Preparation. Did you ever move with people? You know, there's always the odd parcel where somebody stacked all their books into it, right on top. That's kind of not good preparation, because then not only your grandfather will kind of die on the stairs, but most of the people will immediately get back sores. And don't do that. Prepare good. And then let it just flow. Don't do anything. The best management paradigm is, if you have a hammock and you have an office, drill 2 holes. There and there, hang up your hanger and just let them work. Don't do anything. And go upstream. Yeah, okay, that's a bit of a pun here. But important here is the fact that in that system, you don't have fixed boundaries in your flow, in your process organizations. You can allow people to move upstream and downstream as the organization needs it. That's very difficult in product development, because most of the people don't know how to develop in React Native. And all the React Native developers, they are not really fussed about QA. And yet QA, most of the time, in good organizations, it doesn't come after the development, but most of the time still QA would come after the product is ready, or sort of ready. So it's difficult to get this kind of movability in an organization, but if you can do it, that's great. And then do retrospectives. It's the perfect Kanban, because the Kanban card is actually the parcel. There's one disadvantage. This example you can hardly use for our kinds of organizations, sorry. It's good for moving. It's not good for product development, but we might learn something from it. Then I would like to talk a bit about knowledge transfer. If you implement an organization or a change in an organization, this is the funny researcher, old white man with the ducks, Konrad Lorenz. But he has said that thing about communication. Told is not heard. If I heard something, I might not have understood it. Even if I understood something, I might not agree. If I agree, I have still not done it. And even if I have done something once, it's not maintained. So this is the kind of communication chain that applies to any change in organizations. I have a great idea. I'm the manager. I have the overview of you, 180, 280, 4,000 people, and I tell you what to do. And that's actually something I like a lot. There's some problems with it. Immediately you feel, there's this funny guy up on the stage who tells me what to do. What does that do with your feelings? I know, but if I'd sit down there, I would say, yeah, too. I have a problem with you here. Even if you think it's a good idea, you would need to go through the whole chain to implement a change. Yet, we have talked about IQ before. So if I'm at 128, and that's probably a lie, it's still only a mediocre idea. Usually, to get a good idea, you need many people to look into it, to get a perspective from different diverse angles, and then you get a much more informed idea that you want to transfer through an organization. The problem is, if you try to get good ideas with many people, like if you do it all together, we'll sit here like 4 weeks for a simple decision. So you need to kind of figure out, how do you start off with an idea, who do you involve, who don't you involve, should be a diverse group. So the second problem really is, even if a manager has a good idea, it's probably a good inspiration, but it's not a good full-blown idea. And it helps you also in your communication chain if you involve people early on, because they can then work as multiplicators. So in change projects, we always like to have something like a small change team, which is pretty diverse and accepted by the organization, and they can help you figure out really good ideas to implement in an organization. Like if you do a reorganization and want to do your domains, that's a lot of the talks are about domains here. Yeah, you could just define your domains, or you could think a bit longer about it with more people and try to find good domain cuts in your organization. And then you need to implement that, and everybody will hate it because nothing works as it used to work beforehand, and so on and so forth. An organization who might have been smart yesterday could well be stupid today if circumstances change or if the culture changes. And as example for that, why is that also difficult? Just need to factor that out. Why are organizations difficult at all? It's all about relationships and communication. And if you have 2 people, you have one line of communication. If you have 3, you have 3 lines of communication. If you have if you have 4 people, you have 6 lines of communication. And the general rule you apply to the number of communications is n times n minus 1/2. So it kind of scales with n squared. This is actually the reason why it's not a good idea to do something with 200 people at once. We would group up in smaller groups, because we would simply be overwhelmed by 200 times 199 communication parts if you want to talk to everybody. So what you actually do in organizations is you build teams. This is a complexity problem. But then you need to communicate between the teams. Efficient organizations do that in the following traditional way. You build a hierarchy. Hierarchies are really good for communication. They have problems, but they're really good. I don't know whether you've heard about the Dunbar number. The Dunbar number basically denotes how many people you can easily manage. So I can manage 7 people, that's the Dunbar number. Each of the 7 can manage 7, and so on. If you layer that in a pyramidal organization like that, after 6 layers, you end up with 500,000 people, so that's about the size of the German Post. So you can easily decode that the German Post has 6 levels of major hierarchies, which you can cross until your CEO. And of course, that's good if you just need to communicate downwards. In efficient organizations where the top manager or the department manager understands everything that goes on below him or her, they can easily decide intelligent decisions and move decisions downstairs and tell them. So for that, it's good. It's a catastrophe for uninformed decisions, because if you're up in the brigade and you command a wrong command down there and they all execute it, then there's podcasts on that. Like, I think the Light Brigade is a British. They even wrote songs about that, in the 18th or 19th century when the Russians fought against the Brits in the Crimea, and the whole British brigade rode into cannons and they were all defeated and killed. So, because of an uninformed decision. Yet, one should say, if you have simple tasks to perform, factoring out your organization in that way becomes very efficient. Nobody in Germany but the German Post can transport a letter for 85 cents from Hamburg to Munich. The entry barrier for other companies to go into that kind of business is really too high. So it has its good sides, but of course it has also its bad sides. Uninformed decisions, if you do complex work, like always thought software development is pretty complex because you look at the screen of your colleague and you see funny editors, but you cannot really judge what they are doing. Is that good or bad? So it's complex. And we work with stuff which is pretty intangible. If you build a car, at least you can touch the car. And if you open the bonnet, there's a motor beneath it most of the time nowadays. And so it's tangible, but IT and products, the digital products are pretty intangible. They're hard to talk about. So this is a hard kind of business, and for that, these kind of organizations do not suffice. They're not enough. So what is a stupid organization? And my dog always said, don't say it, it's just too embarrassing. That was the second bucket brigade that I managed. I managed it. There's already the mistake. I experienced the first, and then I was on the wagon, you know, the Umzugswagen, what's that called? The trolley where they put the passes into. And I shouted at everybody and said, let's do the bucket brigade. And you guys up there, and don't put it down on the stairs. And of course, people didn't like me shouting around. And I had such a brilliant idea, but I was not heard. I was really frustrated. I was agitated, and I got a bit angry. And then 2 people started to leave. They said, I'm not going to work here any longer. It's just too annoying. Either he goes or I go. And that's actually the point where the 80-year-old grandpa down on the bench help says, come here, take a coffee, let him shout a while, and then you just do it your way. So that's maybe the benefit of that. So what's really the embarrassing part about it is we have learned it once, and we think if we learned it once, we can do it again. Every organization is different. The people in every move, they are different. You have to gain trust again. You have not experienced the fun stuff of work and flow before. So why should it work the second time around as easily? It's a bit like Marvin. Do you know the Hitchhiker's Guide Through the Galaxy? Marvin, the maniacally depressed robot, he always knew the answer, but nobody cared to ask him. So yeah, it's a shit position. And the interesting thing is about mistakes. Of course, shouting at people was a mistake. This morning, I talked to a very young guy who's been in a hacker school, Finn. And in our talk, I had this idea, and I thought, yeah, maybe the ingredients to the flow is actually the ability in an organization to admit mistakes on a daily basis. On an hourly basis. Even in the last meeting, I'm not sure whether I did it correctly or whether I was too hard on people or not hard enough or whatever. So it's always reflecting and self-correcting yourself. If you want to learn as an organization, maybe I'm taking the punchline a bit, but then it's about self-reflection and Selbstbewusstsein. Whatever that is in English. Well, the ability of an organization to reflect itself, like in retrospectives, and learn from that. And then, of course, that also boils down to an individual level. I, as a manager, need to be able to reflect my behavior and to negotiate it out, all the mistakes that I did yesterday and the day before. I also did good things, but I make mistakes on a daily basis. That's interesting, because when I worked for Lufthansa, people would kind of say in the management, yeah, well, I made a mistake 9 months ago, but we talked about it. And I won't do it again. And then I think, fuck, I'm doing mistakes on a daily basis, and I always do the same mistakes again. So maybe the ability of an organization to become into the flow is to be a bit more forgiving with yourself and with your peers. And if you fight, then find a way to sort it out afterwards and like each other again. So where's this communication chain breaking here? At least at these 2 points. I listened to something, but I didn't accept it or I didn't like it. It might be right, but I simply don't like the idea. I need some time to accommodate to that. All right, so I need 3 more minutes or 5 more minutes. It's difficult to apply something that you have learned once again. You should nevertheless try hard, but it's not easy. You cannot just take a pattern and implement it in the next situation. So you need to learn from mistakes. And also, shouting around so much was a pretty stupid idea. I always get so emotional with things. I'm that kind of guy. I mean, we have also relaxed guys in the company who are pretty scrum masters and moderators, but I'm not. I'm sincerely not a moderator. I'm a changer. So I should at least be aware of that fallacy and kind of work with it and use it where it's useful, but step back when it's necessary to step back and stop shouting at people. I don't know why I took that, and just because it's funny. That's a job description, I thought. It's actually not a job description. It's a mistake. For the English people, it's what is it? The upper and lower jaw. In German means Kiefer, but it's spelled in a different way. And Kiffer is a drug addict. So, yeah. I thought when I worked for the insurance company, I looked up whether Oberkiffer or Unterkiffer is in the part of their Berufsunfähigkeitsversicherungs thing, but it was not. So some examples from real life. I used to talk a lot about Otto. I had a brilliant experience at Otto. At Otto, we did this kind of, in 2012 to 14, we exchanged Intershop to a self-developed system with domain-driven design and everything. And the one thing I really liked was this kind of teams were led by three people in leadership. That's a lot more intelligent than just one person, and they had to kind of agree with each other. And then we tried to build teams in the same pattern along the value chain and into domains. And suddenly, not in your line organization, but in your process organization, die Ablauforganisation, Trennung der Ablauf von der Aufbauorganisation. The process organization, you had collaboration naturally between different faculties in the line organization. Or something else was with the Hanseatic Bank. This is a daughter company of Société Générale and Otto. They dish out credit cards, Visa credit cards for customers. And they used to be one of the not so flashy companies in Hamburg, to say it mildly. Working at Hanseatic Bank was not so cool. So they thought we do an innovation thing, and they invented the Solution Lab. And Solution Lab is we take an idea, we take 5 to 7 people, we put them in a co-working space for 4 weeks, full time, and then they do 4 sprints of discovery and they go through it. And this was like a candle that they lit in the organization. Even while the first lab was going, people thought this is so cool, suddenly we are a cool company. So it's about telling an interesting story and doing something and changing something. And then we adapted that to CW, that's a company in Oldenburg, they do photo finishing and photo books. And they had a team, they did it 5 weeks, and while the Hanseatic Bank guys were sitting in the center of Hamburg in the most flashy co-working space, these guys in Oldenburg is a smaller place, you know, company is not as rich, so they put them in a shack from the 60s, which was actually being emptied for demolishing, but they were in this shack and they had a room that didn't even have a window. This is the room without the window. And these guys were so amazing. They invented hexas. Hexas is an idea to put your personal pictures on hexagons. And they have the processing for that, and they tried everything. They built an editor where you can make a tapestry built of hexes in JavaScript. Then there was the guy who produced them. So they put these hexes into machines, and they realized if they're too small, it doesn't work out because the thing that cuts out the hexes is kind of in the last cut, because the thing is not heavy enough or not sucked with the air suction hole enough, it kind of breaks, and it's not. So they discovered what is the minimal size of an hexa. They asked themselves, how can we hang it up on the wall? They talked about pricing, and they talked about marketing. Note that hexas here is written with 1 X in the middle. What strikes you immediately? Hexas has something to do with six corners. So why are there 5 letters in that word? And about 3/4 of a year later, that was the innovation. They won an innovation award at the Photokina with that. And see that, the guy came up, let's do it with 2x, because between 2x you have another little hexagon in the middle again. They were so ultra creative. The spark of creativity of these guys was absolutely fantastic. So that was great. So do something like that. Do innovation. Do something non-orderly. If you have a very efficient organization and you have enough money, try something disorderly, disruptive, and organize for it. That would be a way to do that. And just do it. So that's the finish line of my talk. The dog again. And this is, in a way, if you want to do great things with people together, you need to do these steps together. That's a strategy process. Strategy process says, let's get a common picture of what we see. But do that with 8 people or so. Not just my strategy, because I might not see everything. If you want to be intelligent, do it with 8 people or with 7 people or whatever, with your number of managers. It takes 30, that's harder, you know, because it's a mass of people and you need to somehow organize for that. And talk about where are we today? What is our status quo? Usually, people will tell you different stories and see different things. So get onto one page. Decide what you really see. If you are Julius Caesar, 2,000 years ago, in Britain, on your hill, with all your strategic officers around you, maybe you see a hill and there's some smoke behind that hill. So you decide, okay, there's something funny going on there, but we don't know what it is. So negotiate what you think might be important, where you have not enough knowledge. And maybe also turn around or ask yourself, has anybody ever looked back whether the Scottish are just invading us in our back? Is there anything that you should also look at? Then you have a solid status quo. Step 1, with many people. You need to share that with everybody. The second step is, what could be in 6 months or in 1 year, depending on what your strategy process or your aim is. And this applies pretty much to everything great you want to do. What could be? Tell stories. Stories make reality. Agree on something. You can talk about your vision, but then you have to burn it down to like in a half a year or in a year. And if you agree on what are the best topics, the best next steps that you want to have achieved in 1 year, then strategy is super simple, because you just need to do it. You know where you are, you know where you want to go, and then you decide on 3 or 5 or whatever you want. Initiatives that you all support, and in the communication chain, because you did it with 10 people or with 7 people, you have a much easier story of telling it to the rest of the organization. So I think these are helpful mechanisms to do it. And if you want to know more or get another opinion, ask my dog. Yeah, that's pretty much, don't be worried about getting your hands dirty, I think, or your paws dirty. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johannes. Thank you so much for this talk. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time for questions here on the stage, but I think you will be here around. See you at the get-together in the evening. So if you have any questions for Johannes, find him later. And thank you so much again.